The morning was still and cold, the kind that feels frozen in time. A thin layer of frost coated the roofs of quiet suburban homes in Broomfield, Colorado. Streetlights flickered off one by one as the sun began to rise. Inside one of those houses, laughter echoed briefly, the laughter of children preparing for another ordinary school day. Crystal Krug walked her kids to school, her breath visible in the crisp air. It was a moment of calm, routine, peaceful, familiar. She didn't know it would be her last. When Crystal returned home, something was wrong. Unseen, unspoken. Someone or something was waiting. Within minutes, that quiet rhythm of the morning shattered into chaos. A single scream, a struggle that lasted only seconds. And then silence. When police officers arrived later that morning, they would find a scene that even veteran investigators struggled to describe. No forced entry, no robbery, no witnesses, and the home security cameras, disabled. Whoever had entered the Krug residence knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was deliberate, calculated, and it was only the beginning. What began as a simple report of online harassment was about to unravel into one of the most chilling domestic crimes Colorado had seen in years. A story of manipulation, deception, and control. A story that would expose a truth so dark, even those closest to Crystal never saw it coming. Before the tragedy, Crystal Krug's life had been defined by brilliance, compassion, and devotion, not violence. She was born on November 24th, 1980, in Boulder, Colorado, the middle child in a close-knit family. Her parents describe her as curious, kind, and endlessly driven. She loved to learn, to create, to explore the why behind everything she saw. From a young age, she was drawn to science, fascinated by the microscopic world that existed beyond sight. But she balanced that intellect with grace. She danced, performed, and filled rooms with laughter. Her stepmother once said, "Crystal had this spark. She didn't just walk into a room. She lit it up." That same drive carried her through school and into a prestigious scholarship at the Colorado School of Mines, a rare achievement. Later, she transferred to University of Colorado Boulder to study biochemical engineering. She graduated with distinction, ready to build a future through science, research, and innovation. Her professional journey began at Agient Technologies, a company specializing in advanced materials. There, she quickly gained reputation as a rising star, creative, precise, and tireless. Colleagues admired her. Supervisors promoted her. And those who worked beside her often said she brought warmth to even the most stressful projects. But for all her professional success, Crystal's heart belonged at home. In 2007, she married Daniel Krug, a fellow engineer with whom she shared ambition, humor, and a quiet love of structure. Together, they built what looked like the perfect life. A comfortable home, 3 children, and the sense of stability so many people spend their whole lives chasing. Neighbors described them as the picture of family that had it all. But beneath that calm exterior, a darkness was growing, invisible at first, then unmistakable. By the fall of 2023, cracks began to form in the Krug's seemingly perfect world. It started quietly with a message, an email, a familiar name, Jack Anthony Holland. He was an old boyfriend from Crystal's teenage years, someone she hadn't spoken to in over 2 decades. At first, the message seemed harmless. "Hey, it's Jack. Hope you're doing okay. I go to Boulder every few weeks. Thought we could catch up." But Crystal felt uneasy. She didn't reply. That silence should have ended it. Instead, it started a nightmare. More messages followed, at first playful, then persistent, and soon disturbing. His tone turned dark, possessive, and threatening. He began sending photos that proved he was watching her. He insulted her husband. He sent emails implying that Daniel was in danger, and that only he, Jack, could protect her. One message read, "Saw you at the dentist today." Another, "I'll get rid of him. Then we can be together." Crystal was terrified. She turned to police, filing reports and saving every message, every email, every piece of evidence. Detective Andrew Martinez, who took the case, noted in his report that she appeared anxious, hypervigilant, and fearful for her safety. He didn't yet realize just how deep this deception would go. Crystal's world began to close in. She started to believe she was being followed. Strange cars appeared near her home. Her phone buzzed at all hours. Anonymous messages, private numbers, distorted threats. She had no idea how the man from her past had found her, her number, her new email, her home. The fear grew constant. Every sound in the night, every shadow on her street. A reminder that danger could be anywhere. What Crystal didn't know was that the real danger wasn't outside her home. It was already inside it. The stalking, the fear, the messages, they all pointed to one name, Jack Holland. But what investigators would soon uncover was far more sinister, because the person tormenting Crystal wasn't Jack at all. For months, Crystal lived in a state of quiet terror. She locked her doors twice, checked the windows every night, and began sleeping with her phone in her hand, ready to call for help. But despite her fear, police could find no trace of the man she claimed was haunting her. Jack Holland didn't exist. At least, not anymore. Detective Martinez searched databases, public records, and social media. No driver's license. No recent photos. No residence. Nothing. The trail ended decades ago, around the same time Crystal last saw him in high school. So how could he be sending her emails from multiple addresses? How could he know her routines, her appointments, even the clothes she wore that day? Someone, somewhere, had access to her most private life. And the person who did was closer than anyone imagined. It was Daniel. At least, that's what digital forensics would later reveal. But back then, Crystal still believed she was being hunted by a real man named Jack. Daniel, her husband, played the part of concerned spouse. He comforted her, held her when she cried, and told her he would handle it. He even accompanied her to the police station when she filed another report, quietly taking notes, watching how the detective responded. To Crystal, he seemed supportive. But behind that calm exterior, Daniel Krug was orchestrating every second of her fear. Emails traced back to fake accounts were created using VPNs and burner addresses. The timing of the messages always matched Daniel's hours working late in his home office. Even the photos Jack sent to Crystal were taken from inside the Krug home, from angles only Daniel could have seen. Forensic analysis would later confirm it. Metadata embedded in those photos matched Daniel's own phone. But at the time, Crystal had no reason to suspect her husband. He was her safe place, her protector, the man who had promised to keep her family together. The messages escalated. Jack claimed Daniel was cheating on her, that he was dangerous, that he was hiding something. The manipulation was subtle, psychological warfare disguised as obsession. And slowly, Crystal began to break under the pressure. Her work began to suffer. She missed meetings, avoided friends, and spent hours each night scrolling through security footage, searching for a face that wasn't there. In early December 2023, Crystal sent a message to a close friend. "I don't think I can live like this anymore. I'm scared all the time." She considered moving with the children to her mother's house, at least until the threats stopped. Daniel discouraged it. He told her she was overreacting, that running away would only make things worse. She listened, she stayed, and that decision would cost her life. On the night before her death, Crystal wrote one final entry in her journal. It read simply, "I just want peace again." No one knew that by morning she would be gone. At 8:27 a.m. the next day, a neighbor reported hearing a single scream from the Krug residence, followed by silence. By 9:10, police arrived to find Crystal dead in the family's living room. The cause of death, blunt force trauma and strangulation. Daniel told officers he'd just returned from dropping off their youngest child. He appeared shaken, distraught, the image of a grieving husband. But inconsistencies in his timeline appeared almost immediately. Security footage from a nearby house showed Daniel's car leaving the neighborhood far later than he claimed. And an analysis of his smartwatch data revealed a sudden spike in heart rate. At the exact time of Crystal's death, investigators were cautious. Domestic homicides are complex, often fueled by emotion and deception. But as evidence began to build, a clearer picture emerged. The stalking, the threats, the online harassment. It had all been part of a larger plan, crafted by Daniel Krug himself. He had fabricated the identity of Jack Holland to torment his wife psychologically, to control her, isolate her, and destroy her credibility. He used technology to gaslight her, emails to unnerve her, and fear to break her down. And when that wasn't enough, he made it permanent. The man Crystal trusted most was the same one who built her nightmare. The stalker she feared was her husband all along. As detectives began sifting through Crystal's devices, her phone, her laptop, her cloud accounts, a digital map began to emerge. Every email, every message, every shadow of a login left behind traces. And those traces all led to one source. The evidence didn't lie. The stalker's messages, the hidden accounts, the surveillance photos, all of them originated from the same IP address. The Krug household. Detective Martinez called in cyber forensic experts from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. They combed through gigabytes of data, reconstructing deleted files, and recovering fragments of conversations. Their findings were undeniable. Every Jack Holland account had been created on a device registered to Daniel Krug. Emails were sent during hours when Daniel was at home, often from the family Wi-Fi. Even timestamps from the threatening photos of Crystal matched moments when Daniel was confirmed to be in the house with her. But Daniel had been careful, obsessive, even in covering his tracks. He used VPNs routed through servers in multiple states. He encrypted messages, changed usernames, and deleted browsing history daily. To an untrained eye, it looked like multiple stalkers working in tandem, but the data betrayed him. One missed keystroke, one forgotten sync. That's all it took. Investigators found drafts of the threatening emails on Daniel's personal laptop, messages identical to those Crystal had reported to police. They even discovered an image editor where Daniel had cropped and altered photos of his wife before sending them from the fake accounts. The illusion he built was unraveling, line by line, file by file. When police subpoenaed Google for account metadata, the puzzle locked into place. Every digital fingerprint, login, recovery phone number, time zone, all pointed back to Daniel. Detective Martinez later told reporters, the same person who was helping Crystal report her stalker was the stalker himself. But the question haunting investigators was why. Why would a husband, an intelligent, successful engineer, create a fake man to terrorize his own wife? The answer lay in control. Daniel's co-workers described him as brilliant but rigid, a man who demanded precision, order, and admiration. At home, he was the same. Friends later recalled that Crystal often seemed quieter when he was around, careful with her words. She once told a neighbor, "He doesn't yell. He just shuts down until I apologize." Over time, that control turned into isolation, and isolation turned into obsession. Daniel convinced himself that Crystal was slipping away, that she was losing faith in their marriage. So he built a villain to make her depend on him again, a stalker that only he could protect her from, a lie that would bind her closer. But when Crystal started questioning inconsistencies, when she began talking to detectives and collecting evidence herself, his plan started to crumble. And like many abusers whose control begins to fade, Daniel's next move turned violent. On the morning of December 7th, 2023, the couple argued. Neighbors later recalled hearing raised voices, rare for Krugs. At 8:12 a.m., Crystal's phone stopped transmitting location data. At 8:16, Daniel's smartwatch recorded a spike in pulse rate that lasted nearly 4 minutes. At 8:22, the home's Wi-Fi camera went offline. By 9:10, police were outside. Crystal's body was found near the living room sofa. The children were safe at school, a detail that chilled even the most seasoned investigators. The autopsy confirmed what they already suspected: manual strangulation and blunt trauma. There was no forced entry, no stolen property, and no defensive wounds suggesting an outside attacker. The man she'd feared for months never existed, because the monster had been standing beside her all along. Daniel Krug was arrested later that afternoon at a friend's house. He appeared calm, detached, and eerily cooperative. When asked if he knew anyone named Jack Holland, he simply said, "That name has nothing to do with me. But forensic evidence said otherwise. And soon, prosecutors would use his own devices to tell the story he tried to erase. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that hums with disbelief. Reporters filled the benches. Family members sat clutching tissues. And at the defense table, Daniel Krug stared straight ahead, emotionless, calculating, unreadable. It was April 2024, 4 months after Crystal's death. The trial of Daniel Krug had begun. Prosecutors presented what they called a digital tapestry of deceit. Thousands of pages of emails, messages, and digital traces, each one pulling back another layer of the mask Daniel had worn for years. Lead prosecutor Emily Hartman began her opening statement with a chilling line. This case isn't about jealousy. It's about control. A man who built a world of fear to dominate the woman he was supposed to love. The evidence was overwhelming. Experts testified that Daniel had created at least 12 fake email addresses linked to Jack Holland. Forensic analysts confirmed that all were registered under IP addresses tied to Daniel's home network and work devices. Investigators also revealed search histories, showing Daniel researching topics like how to spoof an email address, tracking a phone without being caught, and how police trace IPs. Each search, prosecutors said, was another piece of a psychological trap. Witnesses took the stand. Crystal's friends, her co-workers, her family. Each one painted a portrait of a woman who was frightened, exhausted, and struggling to understand why her life was falling apart. They recalled her confusion, her desperate belief that she was being hunted by someone from her past. And then came the most haunting testimony from Detective Andrew Martinez. He told the jury, "She came to us terrified, convinced she was being stalked. She was right, but not in the way she thought." The defense tried to shift the narrative. They claimed Daniel had suffered from psychological deterioration, that his actions were the result of obsessive delusion rather than malice. But prosecutors countered with precision, showing emails Daniel wrote minutes after comforting his wife, proving that every act of empathy was just another layer of deceit. The jury sat stunned as messages from Daniel's fake accounts were read aloud. One email, written under the name Jack Holland, said, "You'll never be safe. He can't protect you. I can." Moments later, another message, this time from Daniel himself, arrived in Crystal's inbox. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out together." It was a performance, one that blurred the line between savior and predator, and Crystal never realized the two were the same. In the final week of trial, the prosecution presented their timeline. Digital forensics, heart rate data, and deleted GPS logs all pointed to one conclusion. Daniel killed Crystal between 8:14 and 8:19 a.m. on December 7th, 2023. He strangled her, then staged the scene as if an intruder had attacked. He left just enough chaos to suggest an external threat. But like every other detail in this case, his own technology betrayed him. The moment his smartwatch registered an intense spike, the home's Wi-Fi camera shut down. Just minutes later, his phone accessed the same fake Jack Holland email account, as if to continue the illusion even after Crystal was gone. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 6 hours. When they returned, the room was silent again. The verdict, guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, identity theft, and cyberstalking. Daniel Krug showed no visible reaction. He simply adjusted his tie and looked down at the table. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outside the courthouse, Crystal's family spoke briefly to reporters. Her mother's words were heavy but resolute. He made her afraid of a ghost. But the real monster was right there beside her. Crystal's story became a rallying point for reform, a case study in the dark intersection between technology and abuse. Advocates called for stronger cyberstalking laws and better digital literacy for law enforcement. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation used her case to train new detectives on identifying digital gaslighting, a term coined to describe the use of technology to manipulate and terrorize victims psychologically. Her life, though taken, sparked awareness that saved others, and her name, Crystal Krug, became a reminder that even in the most ordinary homes, beneath the surface of normalcy, darkness can hide in plain sight. In the end, Crystal's strength was not just in how she lived, but in how her story continues to warn the world about the dangers of invisible abuse and the monsters who build fear one message at a time.